Today I'm with Nigel Travis, newly awarded MVE, man of many things, actor, boxing coach, father, grandfather. Anything else?
Son.
And a son.
And my dad's there, so that's important. I get his name in.
Yeah, definitely. I need to. I'm going to interview him next as well, inshallah. Maybe not today, maybe next week when we're all a bit more free. But, anyways, Nigel, basically, this is like a podcast / conversation with people with, I guess, experiences of life. And I want to learn a bit more about yourself, what you've done, you come up, things like Fitzroy Lodge Boxing Club in London, how you got into boxing, and just literally everything about yourself and where you are up to now and just career highlights, highs and lows and everything.
Okay. I suppose the boxing story has been a story all my life. My father, obviously Kelvin, he was the national coach in his earlier years, and so boxing's been around our family all our lives. My dad never really encouraged me. Yeah. My dad certainly never forced me into it, and if anything, he actively discouraged me. Didn't ignore me, but just wanted me to be left to my own devices.
Yeah.
But boxing has been an integral part of my life, and it's guided me to the person that I am today, and I'm truly grateful for it. I'm truly grateful that boxing has guided me to where I've got to, and I have different episodes in my life that have structured me and made me behave in certain manners and guided me on a whatever trajectory I'm on. Yeah. But boxing's been fundamental to that. I'm very fortunate that I have my mother and my father, who I'm very close to. Me and my dad argue like cat and dog, as everyone sees in our gym. Yeah. Maybe it's because we're so similar. And my dad's probably the best coach I've ever seen. He does it differently to anybody else that I've ever seen, and I've tried to mimic him and never got it off. But he's a wonderful, wonderful coach, and probably an even better man. So it's good to be sharing my nights with him. Yeah. Yes, we spend a lot of time together, maybe which is why we argue so much.
That's a really nice introduction, Nigel. Of course, speaking of your father, your closeness, and I guess a bit about your journey. But how old were you when you first got into boxing yourself? And how was it? Were you competing, or was it just...
To be honest with you, I played at it very much in my early days. So, as I say, when my dad was childcare, when my dad was, in charge of the childcare, because my mum was working, we spent all our time, me and my brother, in boxing clubs, because that's where he operated most of his time. So most of his spare time, my dad was an engineer. Yeah. He's still an engineer. He's still that gifted man with his hands. But as I say, on childcare, we were at squads, we were at group meetings and gyms all our life. So I've never really known life without boxing. And as I say, it hasn't been forced on me at all. I made the decision. My dad, as I said previously, discouraged me from doing it because he understands the difficulty in it. And then I did it, and I got to a certain standard. I had my first bout. I was 14, and 14, 15. And I lost my first couple of bouts, but I boxed at Hardwick Lads, which is not far from here. Hardwick, it's about 3 miles away, 2 miles away, and we're still very much associated with the Hardwick Lads people. The club, Henry Finney, God rest his soul, was our coach, and he passed away not long ago. But David Keenan and Michael, they carried on the legacy, which people do. That's what happens. Yeah. People carry on legacies, and boxing clubs are essential, I believe, to calm in a community, to influence in that community for the better I believe. Again, that's just my opinion. Maybe my wife, my mother, people who loved me never really wanted me to box because they care so much about it, and I understand it.
Yeah.
I have, as you mentioned previously, have children, 2 daughters who I never wanted to go into the game, but I would support my children no matter what they wanted to do. Now I have grandchildren. I have a grandson who's 2.5. Stanley James Dodd is my boy. He's the apple of my eye, and his sister Matilda, Caitlin. She's just a wonder. So, would I want them to box? And again, it's a bit of a sticky situation, but I would have no problems with my grandson because I think it's and people will shout, it's bias. That I have many female boxers, and they're very, very good. The same feeling as my mother had when she saw me getting punched in the face. I couldn't ever have that with my daughters, or my granddaughter, or my wife. So that's not what I would want. But I would respect any decision they made.
Yeah.
So boxing has been in my every sinew in my body since an early age. But I played at it at the very start.
Yeah.
And that's why my dad never encouraged it, and I understand that.
Yeah.
I was a bit of a poser, all the gear and no idea, as he said, because my dad had boxing boots that I would wear dressing up, and me and my brother would spar every day. My brother obviously usually won, and he knocked 10 bells of hell out of me, and really, but I would credit my brother as the reason I was reasonably tough. I think I had a decent reputation of being a tough fighter, which is not always good, because you end up looking like maybe me or other people. But I got bashed up a few times, but I was very tough, I believe. That was my reputation, and because of that, I would credit my brother because he was 2 years older than me, and we had some real ding dongs, and our house was full of boxing at all time. Boxers. My dad, which is quite an interesting story. My dad started his coaching career half a mile from here in Hume.
Okay.
So it's now a flats where it is. It was the Cavendish Boxing Club, which was a renowned, a nationally renowned boxing club with a gentleman called Bill Nedley, who was one of the coaches. It was the chair or the secretary. Eddie Copeland, Bob McKinley, Kevin Taylor. These people were phenomenal fighters. Solomon Jeng, and I think they've all gone on their own separate journeys now. Solomon Jeng, is a friend of ours. Him and Mike Brown run Sail West, so it's quite an inclusive community, the boxing community. But my dad started half a mile away on Jackson Crescent, and now he's here in Moss Side Fire Station,
going strong,
changing lives. And as you said, it's great to see him, and it's great to see him doing it, and he enjoys it. I'm in the office now. In the office, that's the harder bit. I'm saying harder. It's more laborious and not enjoyable. That's enjoyable going there. Coaching kids is where the real enjoyment is. This and here, the official side of it, needs to be done to do whatever we're doing. Boxing's at every part of me, and now obviously my wife knows that, my kids know that, now my grandkids know that, so it's wonderful, and the fact that I get to share with my dad is even better.
100%. So already like so much history, all these names, all this basically legends of the city that I'm not gonna I don't want to know about, but you guys will. History.
Yeah, and again, I suppose unfortunately, as a nation or as a world, we don't seem to learn off history sometimes. But I think there has to be some telltale signs of things that work, and boxing clubs really do work in, and the archetypal venue for it is a deprived area. So the history is that historically, the best boxing clubs happen in the most deprived areas, because the people who come into boxing clubs the criticism from other people is that you're teaching them how to fight, and that's actually not the case. These kids know how to fight.
I think teaching a person how to fight and defend themselves, but then also instilling the ability not to abuse it, is probably one of the best gifts a person could be taught.
Maybe, but and when we first opened this 19 years ago, people criticised us as the fire service or as a firefighter, as I was, that we were encouraging people how to fight. These kids know how to fight by the very nature. Some of these kids have to fight for food, and that's the truth of it, and that's quite tragic and sad. But if there's a family of, and we've had it, we've had people with 9 brothers and one mum and dad, and whether they're working or not, they have to fight for the food. There's only so much food to go along, and so that's the harsh reality of what some of these kids have to do. And as sad as it is, the kids just get on with it. So they know how to fight. It's just how you lead them and guide them, and the element of respect, which is the standard of our gym, is built on the values of respect, discipline, and courage, and they mirror the qualities of a firefighter. That without respect, discipline, and courage, then you can't be a decent firefighter. And I would suggest that without those values, you can't be a decent person. And there are people who think they can do it, and they can't. And so, and sometimes, I think people are all too busy to criticise, but sometimes these kids have simply not been taught and not had that input to change their future. And they've been guided. They've been guided wrongly, incorrectly, or whatever. And who am I to say what's correct and incorrect? But morals are morals, and people, have that respect, that ethic of respect, discipline, and courage. Then I believe that they're on the right track, certainly.
I think so we've touched on a few points like principles, character, morals, and a big one's support system.
Yeah, I suppose, and I hope that we take up the slack of some of the support systems that are out there, because, and again, I'm not politically motivated. I'm not politically knowledgeable. What I do believe is that relative governments, maybe the government we have now, and certainly previous ones, have eradicated our support networks, our support systems. So things like, and it's quite a brutal thing, and my words can be, sometimes a bit vicious, but the fact that governments or a government can close libraries, because libraries are free to the people, for people to be taught. If people go in them, then great. If people don't, then that's their choice. But how dare any respected government close libraries? And usually it's because of business, nothing else. So if people are putting business before the value of life, I think is morally different, and I hate it. And I will tell anybody, any person, any politician, or a person of authority, that I think that. And I also think that by giving these kids, I believe that the whole, people, you only actually truly receive when you give, and whether that's, and again, that's not just about money, giving money away, or because some people have more than enough money to give away, but just giving time and giving the kids here the time that they need and that they value and probably deserve, and maybe they've never had that time. So, and like any cliche, it's learned behaviour. So, in giving you receive, but these kids, they've never maybe been taught the right way because of some chaotic lifestyles, some chaotic situations. They don't have those support networks in place. Whether if they have a mother or father or whoever's in charge of the house, doesn't have the finance. These kids need to feed. They need to eat. They need to provide for themselves. So and who am I and who are we to say you shouldn't do that? Now, and in fairness, some people don't need to do certain things. They do it because of habit or whatever it is, but they also haven't been taught the right ways. And so I believe that that's what we are trying to take up the slack of some support networks, and because some services national health, excuse me, national health, education. We're just trying to really do everything.
I think a big one, another thing that's recurring is empathy. You know, like, I feel like maybe sometimes in life people think that, everybody's had a normal upbringing, normal household, both parents are around, everything was normal, shower's perfect all the time, food was on the dinner table all the time. But the reality is, not everybody's got it like,
of course,
perfect, not like normal.
Of course, and and for anyone to say why they're doing that, they don't know the history, all that thing you talked about. They don't know the reasons for this. So it's easy for anybody to watch the stuff, the garbage that's on TV or on the papers, or certainly the poison on mobile phones nowadays.
Yeah.
They can be influenced by that, and they can have an opinion on it, when really it's actually not the case.
Yeah.
So they need, just by giving something, just by a metaphoric arm on the shoulder, and you talk about empathy. I shout a lot, I swear a lot, but I'm constant. I'd like to think, I try and practice, because it's been performed on me for many years by my father and other coaches that I had. Tough love. So sometimes it isn't what you say, it's what you don't say.
Yeah.
And so the disappointment that I always felt in my father or my coach Mickey Carney or Dave Langholm, sometimes by them not saying something or shaking their head, it would hurt me. So I would always try and please those people. And if I can replace that, so my empathy is I shout at all the kids, because they need a lot of shouting at, and sometimes I shout too much, and so that's on me, and I have to alter that if necessary. But I'm doing it with love. It sounds daft. I'm shouting, come on, you need to do this, and just strong encouragement.
I think sometimes people need a bit of a show of light.
Of course, and obviously, maybe you're fortunate, maybe you're unfortunate that you've been in there, you've had those.
No, fortunate, definitely fortunate.
So you've had that experience. You've had me shouting at you and calling you lazy and doing anything just to get through just a little bit more than maybe you would do by saying, can you sit down? Can you do this? They're talking nicely, but if I say it or shout it, or not always necessary, but if I swear at someone, I'm not doing it with vulgarity and cussing for the sake of it. I'm doing it because I want these kids to have an impact.
It's passionate.
And it's passionate and love. It's tough love, and that's why I am.
But you know what it is though? You're talking about empathy, support system, everything we're talking about, and it's very rarely I might message somebody online, or maybe I might ask somebody on the street and stuff like that, and it might help that we know each other for a few years now. If I see I got a well-made man, I guess, on the street, can we sit down for an interview? Can I pick your brain? This. He might not have the time, maybe because he doesn't know me and stuff like that. But I feel like I can come in here and Nigel can have an interview. Calvin can have an interview. Calvin can show me this. Nigel can show me this. Even the boys like Savan, Hamza, Bash, everybody, do pad work, whatever. Just watch them learn. I feel like I can come here and kind of benefit of some sense in that way, if that makes sense.
Of course, and again, there's so many cliches. You're usually defined in our sport, and certainly in boxing clubs, by winning or losing. So having your arm raised or your arm not raised. So that's how you're usually defined, as a winner or a loser. And really, that's quite small-minded, or you can't see the wood for the trees, as they say, because sometimes some of our greatest successes have never actually boxed. So some of the kids that we've used, who we've influenced, have never competed in boxing, but they've come here. They're now going to school. They're now be able to look you in the eye and shake your hand, which they were never going to be able to do. Now, the run-of-the-mill, bog-standard, response would be, people would know that you shake hands and say thank you. But some of these kids have never had that influence, never had that teaching. So the fact that they can now do that, the whole purpose of our gym, of course it's about boxing. Of course we want winners. Of course, we've got kids who've been with us for a long time. Connor Tusbridge of this world, who's hopefully a magnificent fighter. We've taught him for many years. He's now ventured onto the professional world, and you know, he's had a few injuries, but you know, he's poised to do well. We hope, God willing, inshallah, as you would say. But that's, you know, that's the truth of it is, you know, the genuine truth of it is that our work, you know, realistically was done with Conor Sudbury when he started changing his mind. You know, and it wasn't finished. But most of our work was done when he decided not to go down the road that he may have been destined to go down, or do the things that he may have been destined to do, because of, you know, his social background, because of where he lives, and because of the you know what the things that are connected to him, you know, and a deprived area, you know, and that's. But he's got a wonderful mother who looks after him, you know, and she's given him, you know, the life skills that she needed, and where, you know, she wasn't able to, she maybe, you know, she would call on us for support. She wouldn't do that personally, but she knew that he was coming here and he was going to hopefully, you know, do something good with his life. And I believe that he's one of the success stories. And obviously he's a professional, so of course it's governed on winning and losing. But as I say, some of our kids have never actually competed, and never will compete. But they're here in our gym. You know, they're helping out. Whether they're helping clean, or, you know, whatever, you know, ferry kids around, you know, wherever they're going, and just people who want to support you, you know. And again, we've got some of our ex-kids who are now maybe financially secure because of the, you know, the input that we've given them, and they've accessed that stuff, and we've given them the values of life, and now they feel that maybe they want to help support us by donating to us or something. And that's obviously, I think, like, that's maybe like a financial reward, but that's not what we're about. We're about the kids, the success of the kids, whether that be having your arm raised in a boxing club, or even actually getting beat, and learning how to cope with that disappointment, and how you hold yourself in those disappointing times. Because life's full of disappointments. You know, life's full of disappointments. How many times, you know, did you lose? How many times did I lose? Many times. It's life. And some people think it's, you know, some people are so upset when they lose. You know, we had got a wonderful girl, you know, who lost in the ABA finals, the biggest accolade in the sport. Got to the ABA finals, unfortunately lost. Now that's a lesson. It's not a loss. If you can learn off that, you know, defeat, then you're winning something. And then people say, how can you win when you're losing? Because you're learning, you're getting better next time. Yeah. If you don't learn, then it definitely is a loss. So cancel the losses, get the lessons.
It's about having a growth mindset, isn't it?
Of course.
You know, you're not going to be perfect.
And really, and people, you know, people watch TV and watch boxers who 50-0 and all this stuff, and they've been managed fantastically well, and, you know, they've been on the right end of a few decisions that may have gone in the other way. But regardless of that, that's what people perceive, and that's their aspiration, to be the next Floyd Mayweather, to be the next Tyson Fury, to be the next Alexander Usyk, with Anthony Joshua, countless millions in the bank. Yeah, that's some people's success, and some people would govern that as real success. I don't individualise that and say that's the level of success. Of course, it is for them, and they're happy, and they're constantly wanting for more money, and I get that. But I'm about the people, and I want these kids to achieve better. And I do believe, God willing, you know, that by being in this club and by coming and taking part in what we're doing, that they become better in their life. And that's where the job, and that's, in my opinion, where the magic happens.
I've got a question in regards to everything we spoke about. Does it ever get overwhelming for you doing all this?
It just gets tired. You know, it's just hard, you know. But I'm just, you know, talking about successes and defeats. It happens, you know. Yeah. Sometimes things don't go your way. You know, sometimes you apply for funding, you don't get it. So, you know, we've been constant. You know, we're looking at building our gym and extending our gym, and it's a constant battle to do it. You know, we're very passionate about what we're doing, and we're trying to do it. But it's just how you respond. Yeah. You know, so sometimes it's you know, it is laborious, and you've got to go in there and you've got to work hard. But it's a blessing, and it's not, you know, it's not a job. It's not something that no money in the world could pay for what you're doing here, because the value that you get from seeing those kids, you know, perform at a boxing show which we're having on the 23rd of May in the fire station. It's a free event. To watch those events and those kids who came in here a year ago, 2 years ago, sometimes 18 years ago, like Connor Tusbury, that's the thing. When you see that happen, and that's the magic.
Yeah.
And, things get you down when that you have a dodgy decision. It does happen, and that's life. And and I'm very vocal, and as you know, and other people will know. I shout and that swear, and that devil comes out in me. That's my passion. But I'm very passionate about honesty, and again, that for me, I think it's morally repugnant if some good judges are going against you because they don't like you. And you know what? You've got to kill them with kindness, I hope, and say just. And it's harder to do.
Yeah.
It's harder to put into practice. But by them, by killing them with kindness, hopefully you can do that. But it's hard. It's laborious, but it's wonderful.
You got to keep pushing, don't you, Nigel?
Yeah, but as I say, and again, more times you say it becomes a cliche. But in giving, you receive. So how and I know I give a lot with my time.
Yeah.
I know more about some of these kids than I do about my own kids, my grandkids, because I spend more time with these. I do, and that's. But I'm very much supported. So my support network is my wife, and my mum for my dad.
Yeah.
Because I need my dad there. So we're very blessed that we have these amazing women, and you know that now. You're there, and we're very blessed to have the support that we've got, and my wife's a wonderful woman who supports me. Sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I can take that kindness for weakness, which is wrong because I'm knocking it out of the park, as some say, with my wife, punching above my weight, all those things.
Yeah.
But she supports it. I've been with my wife all my life. In fairness, so it's the support that we have with each other is I couldn't live without it. But in giving to these kids. That's instant, tangible, and real. I can touch it. You can see them, and I growl at all of them. I growl at you. Connor Tusbury. He's like a son to me. Comes in here. Hamdan Abubakar. Comes in here. Saban Khalid. They're like your family. They become your family. And I shout at them. What time do you call this? Because no one is above the law. No one is above the rules. The rules for gym are respect, discipline, courage. Get here on time. Or you're disrespecting me.
Yeah.
And you know what? And without those people who have supported our gym for so long, we simply wouldn't be here. I certainly cannot do it on my own. So it's an equal question to those people to say, does it get you down? And I'm sure it does. Sometimes they would rather be somewhere else than being in here every single evening, every single night, giving their night up. For what? For no money. For that instant gratitude and that instant seeing the light going in someone's eyes and seeing how they recognise that the tactic they've been given or the skill, and you just see that grow. You're like a gardener. You're planting seeds and you're letting it grow, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's a lot to praise about, to be honest with you. Like you said, it's not just you. So like all the other guys here as well. You're doing it for free. You're giving up your evenings all the time, and I don't think anybody thinks, oh, why am I doing this, to be honest with you. I think, to give credit where credit is due, I think everybody does it like they're getting paid £1 million a night. So
yeah, and let me be honest with you, man. I genuinely, if I was a lottery winner, I would love nothing more than to facilitate everyone to have a holiday to somewhere or a new car or whatever payment they richly deserve. And again, this is love, tough love. But things like I look at what I mentioned him before, that Anthony Joshua. So Anthony Joshua, some people love him, some people don't, because they're jealous of his success, or they see what he's doing and think, I could beat him or whatever it is. But he, is a good man in my opinion. I don't know him. I've seen him at relative shows. He doesn't know me, so I've got no loyalty to him. I haven't got to say anything like this. But the fact that he supports Finchley Boxing Club, where he was an amateur, and Sean Murphy, who me and my father saw last week, and my father, used to train Sean Murphy, and Sean Murphy was a great amateur and professional.
Wow.
And now Anthony Joshua has bought their gym, you know, he paid for their gym and looked after his coach.
Yeah.
And again, that whatever, you know, the criticism of the fighting, I suppose Anthony Joshua, you know, has more money than he could ever spend. And again, I don't know, it's none of my business. But the fact that he's looking after his old amateur gym, I've got nothing but respect for that. I've got nothing but respect. And you know, he's an example of what I believe should happen. You know, and maybe if Conor Tusbury becomes a multi-millionaire, then he might look after this gym. Great. You know, Pat Brown, he's doing great things. And you know what? Good. Pat Brown's been in two gyms. You know, he's got Sale West, you know, amateur where his father runs, and so he'll look after them first. And good luck to them as well. But what I mean is, it's, you know, the people who have benefited from you, I believe, should also benefit. You know, pay back in dues, and most of them do, because they understand the value of what they've been given, and they appreciate it. So there's that, you know, that tough love.
Who knows? I might get really. I might become a multi-millionaire one day. I'll be like, let's go on holiday.
And again, whatever it is, and it's not just finance. I'm not chumping about money, because it's money. I've just said money's, you know, superficial, and you know, materialistic, and I get that. But it's essential to run things.
100%.
But people who give in, whatever it may be, just people who giving the time, you know, giving an ear to someone who's in need. You know, just to spare a bit of time. You know, these people that, you know, Samaritans, and who listen to this whole thing, how wonderful that must be. You know, sometimes, you know, it's good. Sometimes there's a happy result. Sometimes it's not. So, but again, it's a bit maudlin, and I'm not trying to, you know, set their tone down. But in giving, I believe you receiving. So, you know, I hope, you know, when my time comes, it'll be a positive ending.
Inshallah. Alright, Nigel, I want to ask you more questions, like, about yourself. So, what were you like with your first fight? Were you nervous? Were you like, let's just crack on with it? You're like, flipping neck, what am I doing here? Like,
yeah, I was nervous like anyone, and I still get nervous now with the amateurs, the pros. Depends who. You know, the bigger the occasion, the more nerves you get, like anything. So, and obviously your first bout is always massive, and I got stopped in my first bout.
Wow.
So, but you know, I think he was called, I believe he was called Gary Owen, or I think his name was. I can't remember vividly, but, and I got stopped. I had a bad nose. My nose bled. My nose was bleeding in the changing room before we boxed.
no way.
It was bleeding. I was nervous, and my blood pressure's high, my nose bled, and I got stopped on a cut nose in the second round, but I lost, and I thought, ugh. And so I moaned at my coach, and my matchmaker at the gym, I had it, lads, Peter Hayes. I said, I want that fight again. Anyway, he got me in the fight again in the next fight, and the guy beat me fair and square, so it doesn't matter. And then I won a few, but you know, you're always nervous, and you have to embrace those nerves. You know, I see it differently now because I'm 53. I'm not doing the actual fighting anymore, or the boxing anymore. You have to embrace those nerves, and they can be valuable. Sometimes they can't, because some people hyperventilate and they really so much anxiety. But you know, I had 107 amateur bouts.
Wow.
But you know, and that was quite a lot. But my dad had more, so my dad reminds me of that constantly.
I'm gonna hopefully interview your dad next week as well.
Yeah.
But how many fights did Kelvin have?
I'm at 170. So.
Wow. So you guys are basically.
But they again, and it was different.
Yeah.
You know, it was certainly different. You know, in the 50s and 60s when my dad boxed.
Yeah.
And then I boxed in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, and it was different than it is now, because there was certainly more boxers and boxing clubs and boxing competitions. You know, sometimes. So I think I won London. I was in London at the Fitzroy Lodge, and I think I had 5 contests to win the London ABAs, and that was like the pre-quarterfinals now, so then you had another 4 bouts.
Yeah.
So that's like 9 bouts to win the championships. And nowadays, some kids, you know, are winning them on 3 or 4 bouts.
Yeah.
So the occupancy was higher certainly, and every generation will say our generation was the best. And I'm no different. I thought, you know, there were the people who were around when I was there, people like Wayne Alexander, who was was knocking people out, and he went on to win British title and WBU, and he was just a ferocious fighter. I never actually boxed him. I always wanted to, but Mickey Carney, who was a wise man, probably kept me away from him for a reason. But you know, there was some phenomenal fights, and I had some great fights, and I loved it. And really, I didn't care where I was fighting, and I really was certainly not a throwback because I was, you know, I was a young man, but I didn't care who I fought when I fought. Mickey Carney was a very, very wise man and matchmaker, and I had a decent record. I had a very good record. I got ranked quite highly, you know, in the English and the British ratings, but you know, what I've gained from boxing, and again, I hope I'm not too punch drunk or whatever it is. I'm pugilistic dementia, whatever it's called. That does happen. People do get punch drunk, and it comes in the later years, you know. So you don't know the impact you've had, but you know, I wouldn't do anything different. I do honestly believe that, and I know that people like, you know, people who have, you know, who do die of dementia, or it does happen, and it's a mad thing at the moment. There's a lot of it, but I don't know any fighter, any boxer who would say I'd never do that again. I've never heard anybody do it. You know, even those who are, you know, who then eventually succumb to dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever it is. I mean, the great Muhammad Ali, things like that. Yeah. But if I had to do it all over again, I'd do exactly the same. And I love it. And maybe took too many shots. You know, I was too tough for my own good. But it doesn't matter. You know, I did it. Maybe in a future years, well, hopefully do this again, and I'll be able to say the same thing and remember who you are and all that. But you also have to understand that, you know, that what I've gained out of boxing, you know, is far outweighs any negative impact that I've had. And you know, I learned tolerance, even though I'm sometimes intolerant, and I learned patience, even though sometimes I am definitely impatient. But you know, I'm aggressive by my nature. You know, people beep at me in the car, I'm like, and I'm looking out, and so that's a madness about it, but that's people, so I have to temper that and understand that, you know, it's life. You know, so and really by saying I'm sorry, usually, you know, and I've learned that maybe only recently. So you know, it's you know, boxing's been good to me, and continues to be good to me, and hopefully, you know, I can be good to some of these kids and influence them in a positive manner.
Definitely. I think you've done a great job, and hopefully, inshallah, keeps going. I know I'm a bit obviously mindful of time. Hopefully, I think we need a part 2, to be honest with you. There's just so many details I can't go into in one video.
No problems at all. You're always welcome here. You're still our boxer. You're still part of our gym, and as everybody is who's done it. And you know what? Anything that puts the gym, the club, the people in a good light, and even the sport. So this sport, you know, is, you know, it needs encouragement. Does it? You know, people. Some easy to do it down because, you know, things do happen. You know, it is dangerous. It does happen, but you know, as I say, the positives, in my opinion, far outweigh the negatives.
100%. Nigel, thank you so much.
God bless.
Appreciate your time.
God bless.
And hopefully we can get a part 2 soon as well.
Soon.
Thank you.